I think it's on, right? It should be on, but you never know. I'm like 3 or 4 minutes late at this point, but we'll get right into it. Come on, LinkedIn, go live. Go live. I think it's working. Is it live? Yeah, okay, it's live. It has to be live. If it's not live, then I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But yeah, happy. It's only Tuesday, but it feels like Thanksgiving already. So happy early Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We got a lot to cover, and we have less than an hour to go through everything. I've made quite a bit of progress in the OnlyFAANGs project by vibe coding something that I thought would be cool. And I've gotten some really mixed feedback from people. Some folks think this is really cool, this vibe coded CRT shader that you've made. And then I also got some really good feedback from pretty senior hiring managers like Ron Golden. And Ron is really nice because he didn't like outright say the criticism. He asked a very poignant question, which is this what hiring managers are looking for from somebody to exhibit as their craft skills? Besides companies or teams that are hiring for someone who's working in VR or like super cutting edge deep tech stuff. And the answer to that is no, that is not what they're looking for at all. What I've made is not exactly a traditional portfolio piece. It does not exhibit the UI design skills that are necessary in the vast majority of product design roles out there. So so here we are. And and while this tool is pretty cool, I think the criticism stands. It's not doing exactly what I needed to do in order to land a top tier design role. So for the folks who are not familiar with OnlyFANGs, I'm trying to land a top tier design job in less than 4 months at this point. And after not having done any design for over 3 years now. So I used to be a designer and I went into design recruiting. So I haven't really touched Figma in a very long time. Besides to make some LinkedIn post graphics, like I haven't worked on a design team in a while. So I have a lot stacked against me, unfortunately. But yeah, I also have learned quite a bit about interviewing and what hiring managers are looking for. And despite despite learning all these things, I am willfully ignoring everything I've learned. So do as I say, not as I do in many ways. Um, this tool I built out is done on Magic Patterns, which is a vibe coding tool similar to Cursor, V0, and what else? Lovable, etc. And I like it quite a bit because I know the founders, they're cool. We did an event together last year for Designer Friends that had quite a few people that had like 200 attendees, more than 200 attendees. And it was great. So I mainly use their tool right now because it's faster than the alternatives. So I started by using Cursor, which I thought was great. And Cursor is actually quite inexpensive. I don't know how they do it, but their credits just last a lot longer than, say, Claude Code, etc. And Magic Patterns, however, is faster. So I'm willing to pay more money, right? Because instead of waiting, say, 5 minutes for a prompt return, I can get it out in 1 or 2 minutes. That's a huge win. I'm more time poor than I am money poor, right? Because I have only 4 months to do all this stuff. So this project, Cursor is more of an IDE with vibe coding baked in for what it's worth. Yeah, that is true. That is like a main selling point. But as a non-coder, that is I unfortunately do not know enough code to use an IDE at this point. Maybe like 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I knew how to use I knew how to code a little bit, but not anymore. So here I am, and what I really wanted to do was to create a retro CRT website. And what I mean by that is there's a really cool movie called Aliens Romulus. Well, oops, over here. And the whole movie has a cassette retro CRT aesthetics that I love. Just the way it looks. It's kind of it's like future retro where everything is set in like the because you can see a floppy drive down here. This is like from the 80s or 90s in terms of the physical technology, but the UI also looks like it's from the 80s, but it's set in like the future, like 2080. So another like 80 years, like 60 to 80 years from now. So it looks really cool, and I want to make a website that looks similar to this kind of really retro look, and that's hard to do because a lot of this is not based on the UI design. Like I cannot remake this in Figma, for example, and I have to somehow either process the video in After Effects or I don't know. I had to do something in Photoshop, right? It's not really what's that shit called? It's not a raster. Sorry, this what they're doing is a raster effect. It's not a what's the opposite of raster when they're using like math points or numbers to sketch out the shapes, which is what Figma. Oh, vector based. Yeah, it's not a vector based design. So I've vibe coded this, and there are three different inputs. Either you upload a video file, an image, or you can use a webcam, or you can type out the words, whatever you want to do. And mostly I use webcams because it's like a faster way for me to prototype or to test things out. And I can create all these different effects with it. So I have an effects library, a preset library that I've made of all the effects I thought looked cool. And I can select any of them really quickly. Let's say Neon Genesis is like one of my favorite. I'm trying to create this, kind of like a signal interruption vibe with it. And they're also like more older black and white colors. Ooh, I don't know. It looks a little bit different now. I think I have to. So I've broken some things with vibe coding at this point, so I have to somehow fix it again. But yeah, so you can like cycle through all the different UIs, or sorry, not UIs, all the different effects, and it's all animated as it changes. So it's fun. It's fun to play with, and all of this broken down piecemeal with different effects similar to Photoshop filters. So you can duplicate the video layer, you can create a pattern overlay, change the grid size, so you can more closely emulate the CRT pixels. And you can also change the level similar to how it works in Photoshop. Darken it, lighten it, output levels, midtones, darks, lights, all of it can be changed. Same with colors and tones. So you'll notice I copied a lot of the UI from Photoshop because that's what I'm familiar with, and also from Figma. And these are all like the typical 2D editing tools out there. So it's fun. You can add different glows, and you can also change the threshold, what colors that affects the glow, and the angles, the distance. So all the pretty much not all, maybe not even close. To be honest, Photoshop is such a huge tool that despite adding, spending like 200 plus hours on this and adding dozens of features, I only scratched the surface. This is maybe like under 0.5% of Photoshop. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, right? Like you have pixel artifacts, you can add all these different effects to it. Well, let's turn everything off so you can see what I'm talking about. Oh, did this break? This might have broken. Yeah. So I added a big feature recently, which is CMYK options. Why? I mean, I'm not printing this, but yeah, CMYK, not RGB. So all digital color spaces are typically RGB, red, green, and blue. And let's see, does this do anything? Oh boy, yeah, I've broken. Oh, this thing still works. You can have screen tears. So similar to how when you have a lot of signal interference and sometimes the screen gets cut in half and screen vibrations. Oh yeah, this thing still works. So some things have broken, some things still work, fortunately. And what else? CRT effects. Yeah, give it a CRT curve, in other words. VSync lines. I like this one a lot. And this one took a while to recreate. But all of this is done over WebGL, so it's all live rendered with your graphics card as opposed to using After Effects and then having to export the video. So the theory is that I could potentially export this as a layer on top of any website I want to host. And that's what I was able to do by exporting this to Framer. Sorry, yeah, Framer. I wanted to build my website over Framer, and I wanted to get this effects there, right? So I've done most of it. So this right now is a prototype of the site. It's it's not meant to be designed anyway. It's more of does this filter actually work? And so far it does. It does for videos and for images, but not for the text or the fonts, not for anything that's not an image, unfortunately. So what I did here was basically take whatever current filter I have, and then I will export it as code, and then I would paste it into Framer under one of the assets. Yeah, under this file. And then, oops, that is not the code. So I'll paste it in. And then I can go back to the page. And you can see now it has the whatever effect that I pasted in from here. So it's okay, it's not exact actually. Let me see, what did I do wrong here? Let's do this one. So let's export this to Framer by copying the code over. And actually, let me make sure it is this one. So I'm going to paste it here. Oh yeah, now it's working. So it'll take whatever filter that I've currently made and selected, whatever preset, and then it'll apply it live to any video or images I want in Framer. However, again, does not affect the entire website yet. So I have to figure out how to do that. I know there's some limitations with Framer in terms of how WebGL reads the document or DOM, something model, document object model, I believe. So it's not able to sample the pixels or the anything that's not an image and then have WebGL filter that. So that's a limitation. But this is now enough that I can recreate websites with it. And I try to do that in the typography as well. So I can type, whatever thing I want to type down, and then I can apply different filters to it. Oops, no, that just changes the font styles. Huh, that's an interesting effect. So a lot of these effects are not made for fonts or for text yet. They're really meant for the webcam or for videos. And I have, excuse me, I have to like find a middle ground where the filter works well for both text and for the images. And I'll get there. It's just a matter of time and effort to get to that point. But to get to what I wanted to do earlier, and this part is pretty difficult to do. I've added a lot of functionalities to the pattern overlay. I'm going to turn off the filters that I've created. And let's go back to webcam so you can see everything live over video. So this is a live preview of my webcam. And, I have all the filters disabled. And this is the tough part because I want to... Well, actually, it's not even in this one. I'm in the wrong document right now. Go back to magic patterns. No, where is it? All right, it's loading. All right, this is a pre-CMYK because I hard forked it because I was gonna make a pretty big change, and I know that change is gonna break certain things, and that's part of vibe coding challenges. Like you get to a certain point where you have like 20 features, and then you add an additional feature that is a pretty big one. It's gonna break a few other features, and I would guess that 20% of my time is just spent on fixing breakage, unfortunately. But that's just vibe coding. I'm still doing this a lot faster than if I were to do this the old-fashioned way via code. So, document overlay, say grid. Oh my god, did I? Oh crap. Okay, I think I put it in the wrong one. Huh. Yeah, this is the issue with naming conventions. Like you have to make sure that. Okay. No, this is the one. I must have broken something. Yeah, I broke something. Oh, sorry. No. See, this is fuck. All right. I made this UI really confusing because I'm at a point where there's so many features and the features contradict each other. And this is one of them. So, as if you're familiar with graphic design and color spaces and color profiles, you know that everything we're working on digital stuff is RGB. Now, I wanted to create a CMYK function, and it does that right now. So, it took me a while to figure out how to do that. Let me turn off the pattern. Huh. Oh, yeah, there we go. So here's RGB. Here's what CMYK looks like. So CMYK is really meant for printing. Uh, RGB is meant for digital. So with digital, it's emitting light. So you have LEDs that emit red, green, and blue color spectrums or light spectrums, so that human eyes can see things, right? So you can see the colors. And with CMYK, you're using ink to print onto papers or onto other material, and that's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So I've used one of the popular conversion formulas from going from RGB to CMYK to recreate that. And this is what all the color channels look like by themselves. So if you look into the cyan channel, it's grayscale. It's telling you how much cyan is in this image. And there's quite a bit of cyan in my shirt, which is blue, as you can see normally. And if you combine cyan magenta, you form all the purple color. So you can see the magenta that's in my skin, and the blues in my shirt. And then with yellow, you basically get all the skin tones and everything except for black, because we have not added black ink yet. So why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I saw this really cool tutorial on how to create vintage four color halftones. And it looks something like this, which I thought is freaking
Three channels. We only get
amazing and very cool. You should check out Texture Labs, which has a whole series in Photoshop or on YouTube on Photoshop and After Effects. And it's super cool. So it's taking an original image and then applying this halftone filter to it that I think would be really, really cool as something on video. So I wanted to recreate this. And if you watch the tutorial, it goes into all the theories behind it and how it actually works. So I will be recreating this. I already did something similar with all the other retro CRT stuff. So I won't bore you with how I'm going to implement this, but it's just a lot of breaking down the tiny little things that adds up to this, and ultimately this creates a pretty big issue. So we'll talk about it in a second, but if you have any comments, you have any questions, feel free to ask it. I know like LinkedIn's a little bit funky. Last time I did a live stream, I couldn't see anybody's comments or questions, and that's unfortunate because I do like to interact with people as I'm making this stuff. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I can't tell if there are new comments or not. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind, just like write in comment, just say like say anything you want, just so I know that the comments are working and it's not like last time where I thought people were just bored out of their minds. So yeah, here's the issue. Why am I creating a CMYK separation on an RGB platform? And it's contradictory, right? You cannot be both CMYK and RGB. And not only that, but the information architecture is all over the place. Like originally, I wanted this tool to be a hybrid between Photoshop and something like Canva, where you can easily mock something up really quickly, really easily. And also, you have some of the minute controls that you would typically have with Photoshop. All right, so I guess the comments are working. Thanks, Alexander. Really appreciate that. So yeah, all this stuff is fortunately working. Um, anyway, here's the issue. If you try to do a hybrid tool, and this is an issue that I believe a lot of PMs and designers falter at, when you try to satisfy two competing criteria, you end up something that's very sloppy. And this is where I am right now, unfortunately. And furthermore, typically this is not how I would build anything or how I would design anything pre AI. I'm usually a lot more thoughtful about how I build things, how I add additional features. I want to make sure that everything makes sense holistically. And the issue with AI right now is it's so easy and quick for me to add additional features that I almost don't know when to stop. It's like a kid at in a candy store. Like you want everything and you add everything. And so far it works from a logistical standpoint. Like from a feature standpoint, almost everything works well. There are very few bugs until I add additional features, but that's a different issue. The issue here is information architecture really, really sucks. It's not really clear what you do. There are 50,000 different buttons, and it's also not clear how these different filters interact with each other. So I did something that I should have done a while back, which is to consolidate everything that I've added and rethink how this should be built. Because right now the UI doesn't work. So what is the issue exactly? The issue is that while this creates some really cool tools, I mean really cool visual effects that I can implement in different websites or on framer sites over video images, it's not a really good application. It's not a good tool. And furthermore, would I feel good about putting this in my portfolio right now and trying to land a job with it? I think this output effect, if I use it judiciously for the right media on my personal website, yes, I can use this. Like I can, add some videos to my website or some imagery or some kind of graphics that leverages the effects here. That'll work. But this tool itself is not good. I would not feel comfortable putting this in my portfolio and saying I'm a good designer with the kind of UI here. So I need to refactor this in some way. And one thing I did early on, well, by early on, I mean like yesterday, was I asked this: create a button in the top left next to cassette deck title. When I click on it, it takes me to a completely different screen. On that screen, show me a diagram of all the features and functionalities in this app. I want to use this to audit this tool so that I can restructure it. I bolted on way too many features that it's very convoluted. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm doing a self audit and I'm using AI to do it so that I don't typically like pre AI when I join a company. Typically, the company I join is has been around longer than they've been around for before I joined, and their tools or their product is so convoluted and bloated at that point that it's hard for me as a designer to realistically add on and improve the features that they have. And every time we try to add on something, it feels very bolted on. We don't ever go back to improve it anyway. And I would typically do an audit. So I would sit down with the design team and we would map out the object mapping within this tool. We would say, okay, what does this tool do? What are the different objects that it has relationships with? So it's like object relationship model in many ways. And it's similar to like like fuck, object oriented programming within code if you're a developer, where you're trying to like figure out all the different things that are happening in this product that makes it work. And then you try to distill that and rethink the app so that you can simplify it and make it a lot more usable. So I did that, and here's what it gave, and it's pretty good. It's like it's dividing all the different features that I have into 6 categories. So we have a core pipeline, which is we have, what happens. These are the objects that get put into this app, which is the immediate input. You can either put in webcam, videos, images, etc. And then the WebGL renders it. And there's also a mosaic grid on top of it. So I don't fully agree with this part because I do think mosaic grid sits within WebGL, but at the same time, it kind of makes sense, right? Because the grid itself, I'm gonna open this up again so I can swap between it really quickly. The grid itself is a key component of what makes this retro CRT work. Maybe I just go over here really quickly. So here's a grid, and that gives it a pixel look that reminds you of like an interface from the 70s or 80s. And then everything else is like a filter on top of it. You get the colors, you get the glows, then you have all these different effects that recreates that, which would be the CRT simulations. And there's also an effect stack and a workflow. So the workflows are, I would say, more extraneous. Like you have presets, library that I can cycle through. It's more to help people who are new to this tool get acclimated and see like the possibilities of what this thing can do. An animation studio, so I can create animations. You can export the framer. You can also record the video, right? And then here's a render pipeline. And the way WebGL works, I think, I'm kind of like assuming a lot of things here based by working with this. So I'm not really good with WebGL. I don't really understand it, to be honest. And what it does is it takes the original source and goes through a pipeline, a rendering pipeline, so that it ultimately comes out with the effects that you see here. And the pipeline seems to be done in a chronological fashion. So you do, this first and this and this and this. And this is probably most similar to how Photoshop works to designers like us. We have different layers in Photoshop. And we know that one layer sits on top of another layer, creates another effect. Same with filters, same with adjustment layers, etc. Oops. And same with masks, and so on and so forth. So yeah, we're all familiar with this. We're familiar with Figma as well when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I realized that I have to, oops, I have to somehow redo all this so that it makes sense, because right now it's just kind of all over the place. How would I do this? Yeah, this is really tough. I think the key decision I have to make here is, what kind of tool is this? Is this is this a video editing tool or a video filtering tool? Or is this supposed to create an effect for websites? Originally, I only wanted to do one thing with this, which is to create a cool effect for my personal website, for my portfolio. I want my portfolio to stand out. Like I don't want to use a typical, um, Squarespace or Framer template. I want something that's different from other designers. And to me, this was the key to getting that. I still believe in that. As I'm making that, I realized that the quickest way to prototype it and to test it out is by testing it out on videos and images instead of pulling a website because of browser security. I cannot just pull in a website like say google.com or reddit.com. It wouldn't let me in vibe coding, or the browsers would not let me. I would need to figure out some ways to get around the security uh, limitations, which to me wasn't worth it. It's easier just to load an image or video. And then I went too far because it was just really cool to edit the videos and the webcam stuff to create the effects that I want. And you can also take it further because you're not limited by the legibility of text, for example. And I went too far there. So is this a video editing tool or is this a website filter creation tool? And they're both legitimate uses, but I should probably make a decision as to which one it is because right now it does both. And as a result, it does both pretty poorly. Or it does it okay in my opinion. It's just that the UI is now extremely convoluted. Now, the other thing I want to consider is beyond what kind of tool this is. So really, is this a video editing tool or is this a website filter tool? Right? That's the first question you want to ask. And it's something that I really don't think most PMs or designers are asking this question enough. Like, what are we really trying to do here? What is the main goal that we want to accomplish? And too often, I think most PMs are trying to do like, why don't we satisfy all customers? Like, who is your core customer, right? Like, or our user is everyone, and that doesn't work, right? You have to be very specific, ideally, especially early on, because otherwise you're delivering very watered down value to everyone. So this is the first question. Second question I should be asking is this a simple, easy to use tool similar to Canva, which is, somebody, you don't have to be an expert marketer or graphic designer to make something that looks pretty good on Canva. And that's their business model, and it works very well. And there's no shame in that. It's very smart, and we need to be creating value for people who are not expert users. That's a perfectly legitimate business model and a need and a really good product in many ways. Or is this a power user tool similar to Photoshop? You have to remember that, just because we're designers, most of us have probably used Photoshop if we're over the age of 30 something. They were the de facto tool for creating UIs, and same with Illustrator prior to Figma and Sketch taking off. And you could spend, I would say, easily 5 years, half a decade to a decade in Photoshop, and maybe only know 40% of the functionalities and all that you can get out of Photoshop. It's an immensely powerful and deep and also very convoluted tool. So within Photoshop, you can, the cool effects you get out of it is never a one button press. Like, sure, you have you have some glows you can do. You can also have lens flares. You can do in like one or two presses, but in order to make it look really good, you have to really tweak it and combine all the different effects to make something look great and realistic. And that's the power behind it, right? So if you never used Photoshop before, it can take you, there's a steep learning curve. Same with After Effects, Illustrator, etc. You pretty much have to pick up some tutorial in order to use it quickly. And that's not the issue with Canva. Anyone can go into Canva and within like 30 seconds, within a few minutes, you'll create something that's pretty usable. Not so with Photoshop. So do I want this to be a highly configurable tool like Photoshop, or do I want this to be similar to Canva? And that's a decision I have to make, right? So what is my goal here? Which brings me to the core question. The core question, my main goal is to land a job with this tool. And I think that's a really important lens to look at this. Land a high tiered design role as a lead or staff designer, ideally, by leveraging this app in my portfolio. And it's kind of like two birds with one stone because I do want to design this app, but also use the output or the effects on my website. So let's be more specific on this portfolio. Ideally, by leveraging this app in my portfolio through the design of the UI, the efficacy of the product itself. Maybe it's a tool, not a product yet. And by leveraging the output for my personal website. So these are three different things. How well does this product work? And out of these three things, really I've only done like 70-80% of this leveraging the output of my personal website because I know I can output the filters for personal website. Maybe not for Framer yet because I do need to figure out how WebGL would read the DOM or document object model. But it's pretty much there. And right now the efficacy of the product itself, it's not it works well-ish if you know how to use it. And I'm not fully there yet in terms of baking in all the features and then designing UI. Still, I mean this is horribly designed. So okay, let's think back a little bit. Let's time box this. I need to time box the feature portion of this to end of this week because the UI changes every time I add a new feature because I don't want it to look like Photoshop. And I still need to make some decisions. Is this Canva or is this Photoshop? Do I want to give power to the users and make this hard to use, or do I make this really, really easy to output stuff? And it's kind of an either or proposition. And I think if I want to make this, okay, think about what kind of jobs I want to land with this, right? What could this tool, what kind of job or what kind of team and product business will hire me for making something like this? Probably not a consumer brand of some kind, like definitely not a company like say Nike or Hinge, Tinder. Maybe not really like social media sites either, but a tooling site might be interested in this, right? So any businesses or products that make design tools might find this interesting. And most of these tools are not really, they're not Canva, right? Most of these tools like Figma and Photoshop, etc., they're not easy to use. But then there are different tools like Notion that are actually quite complex, but they're very easy to pick up and very easy to use. So I want to be like Notion in some ways, where there's a lot of power hidden beneath it, but you can get value out of it within the first 5 minutes. So something like Canva on the surface with the ability to dig deeper to do more complex things. Like Notion, you can get value out of it within a few minutes, but to really use it at a high level and like leverage all the database features and all other stuff that I probably don't even know about yet, you actually do need quite a bit of time and energy invested in it. So go the Notion route. And this is kind of a cop out as an answer because you're basically saying like do both. And is this a video editing tool or is this a website filter tool? Yeah. Ooh, this is a tough one. Is this a video editing tool? Because the reason why I'm asking this is because a tool that edits videos has a very different workflow and interface versus something that creates a filter for a website. Now, video editing is also a very saturated space. There are like 1,000 different video editing tools. They all do different things and they all do very similar things as well. And I'm not here to compete with them because like there's no point, right? Like why would I try to compete with After Effects or yeah, like if you know how to use After Effects, you can recreate all these different look and feels. So this has to be something to do with a website. All right, so website filtering tool, first and foremost. Now, I didn't want to do a video editing tool originally. I just did it because it was easy. It was super easy to leverage videos to test out different filter effects rather than bringing a website. Okay, so these are the three decisions I'm making. First of all, I'm going to be restricting the feature implementation at the end of this week so that I can really focus on creating a good UI for it because this UI is not going to land me a design job. This UI very much look vibe coded. This is going to be a website export. Well, I just do. Yeah, this is going to be like I really want to focus on exporting this to Framer or to a website because I think that is a really cool thing that very few other tools out there do something similar. Like if you want to recreate your website and give it like a very different vibe and look to it, you have to just redo it. There's no filter effects, right? It's not like Instagram originally. Like originally before Instagram, we would take photos on our phones and with cameras, and they all look the same, right? It all looked just like this. Well, like this. And then Instagram allowed you to create all these different filters that changed the way the images looked. And I think that'd be really cool for websites. So I want to do that. And then the way I want to achieve this is by making it similar to Canva, where I can dig deeper and kind of similar to Notion. So not really Canva, more like Notion, where it's like easy to pick it up and like try things out and do things, but then you can like dig really deep and make some really cool custom effects. So these are the three decisions I'm making here, and I feel comfortable with that because these are directions and these are limitations. They're decisions, And they're kind of values that I'm using to make additional decisions afterwards as to how I would be doing all this. So going back to here, you have all these different things. Now I can tackle this and think about how I want to redo this. So first of all, the rendering pipeline. This needs more work because, for example, glow. I think glow should be the last one because then you could get the glow effects from CRT and not be limited by the pixelation. So I'll tackle this later, but here are all the different things that we need to do. So we have input, we can upload the video, then we render it. We have a mosaic grid. We can ignore that for now. And I think here's the issue. We have CMYK separation, and then we have RGB. Huh. All right, so now we're going into a philosophical question because if I open up Photoshop, everything has to do with Trevor. This is why I have an Adobe subscription, which costs quite a bit of money each year. It's mostly to work on Trevor stuff because Photoshop doesn't let me, edit individual pixels or doesn't let me edit raster the way that, um, Figma doesn't let me edit it the way that Photoshop does. So with Photoshop, the way it works is that you have RGB channels, then you have layers, and then you can create different layer effects and masking and all that. I haven't used Photoshop seriously in a while, but yeah, so it lets you do all these different layer styles within each layer. So we look into that, and it's basically a document object model that is quite versatile, but also complex. Okay. God, why does everything take so long to load? Okay, so I know Figma has open, I just can't find it anywhere. Where'd it go? Oh, that's why. Figma wasn't working. And this is a concept that one of my older bosses taught me. Oh, by the way, I've been posting stuff on LinkedIn Lunatics, the subreddit called LinkedIn Lunatics, for the past few months. And I'm one of the top posters on LinkedIn Lunatics. I don't know if you know about this, know this about me, but uh, I use LinkedIn a lot, and I see really weird postings sometimes, and then I would just upload it to LinkedIn Lunatics and get a bunch of karma because that's what I do. Anyway, so object-oriented model is something I learned from one of my previous bosses, Ty, at Diligent, and I thought it's a really interesting thing to think about and also very powerful. So the way Photoshop works is you have document, and that goes to layers, and that goes to layer masks and layer effects and layer adjustment layers. So there are all these different things now all attached to the layers. And not only that, but you also have channels. And the channels themselves have the ability to, it lets you edit. You can actually create effects within the channels themselves. And the UI for it looks quite similar to the effects for layers. And all this is really powerful because it creates a system within your mind of how Photoshop works. And this logic is so powerful that you could create almost anything you want using this effect, right? So Photoshop's really just a layer and channels effects tool. And of course, there's filters. So there are a bunch of different things. Oops, I don't know why it's going to the same one. That was confusing. That was weird. Why would it go to the same one? I mean, I guess they technically are going to the same one because you can use filters for channels as well. But anyway, I digress. This is how the object model works. Object relationship model for Photoshop, right? And you could draw the same thing for Figma, which is probably going to be not that different, to be honest. And the question is, for my tool, what is the object relationship model? And right now, that isn't super clear because right now I have a document source. So it could be video or it could be webcam. And I basically just have a ton of like different things that you can do to it. So you have different filters basically, right? So you have the grid. You have, wow, this is really weird. I don't understand why it would do these things. I don't remember it being this poorly. I don't remember the UI being this bad for FigJam, but it's making all the wrong guesses. So we have grid. We have levels. We have glow. We have, noise. So it's like all these different effects that go into this tool that I'm building. And it goes on and on and on, right? So it just goes on and on and on. And you see that reflected in the UI that I've made that I've made, which is, to be honest, it's just a list of collapsible menu items. And here's where it starts to get really confusing because now you have one, pattern overlay. And then I also want to create pattern overlays for each CMYK channel. So I can also create patterns over it. So the pattern overlay basically, let me try to show you what it does. Normally without a pattern, and I want to create a grid, looks like this, right? So this is like the very basics of the CRT monitor, and it looks okay, whatever. But if you were to add a pattern over it and then give it a blend mode of hard mix or, fill, sorry, what's the other one? Linear dodge and pin light, it can create some really cool effects. So I created a mask based on one of those based off one of the tutorial videos on YouTube. And it gets really interesting. Now, when you blow it up like this, it looks kind of crappy, but this is basically emulating the RGB lights in a CRT monitor. So if you look really, really closely with a magnifying glass at the pixels of a CRT monitor, you'll see the separation of red, green, and blue cathodes. And this is trying to emulate that, right? So you can then shrink it down to say like 4 by 5 pixels, and it looks pretty cool. Obviously, not this contrasty. I don't think that looks good, but you could definitely play with this significantly and get some really cool effects from this. Now, here's the issue. Each of these has an overlay pattern, and then the pattern overlay has what does this have? It has another pattern. Oh, actually no, it has CMYK channels, which then goes to another pattern. So this is my information architecture disaster that I've somehow created by bytecoding, and this is I'm sure something that happens to a lot of us if we're bytecoding. I have to reconsider this in order to make something that makes sense, similar to Photoshop's model, or do my own thing. It cannot be this because this pattern, you should not have a pattern overlay and a pattern overlay within a pattern overlay. That makes zero sense. It's very confusing. And I'm sure from a programmatic standpoint, this is going to cause a lot of bugs and issues down the line. So I have to redo this. And this is kind of where we are right now. I have to rethink how the entire UI for this and object relationship model works because right now it does not. And I have to somehow do this in a way that's not so freaking boring because I know this is like boring to talk through. It only makes sense and it's only interesting if you're building the same thing that I'm building right now. So I have to figure this out. But it's 1:30. I have to run to another meeting, but hopefully this has been mildly entertaining to you folks, and we will continue working on this in the next few days. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and I hope you have a great early Thanksgiving. So take care, all. End the stream.